Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim, siratal ladzina an'amta 'alayhim, ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. आमीन। पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ बहुत सारे महाज खुले, कुछ हमने खुद खोले और आज कुछ हमारे खिलाफ खोले जा रहे हैं। आज का महाज जमहूरियत के नाम है। Today's show is about democracy. Before I begin, I'm going to read out Georgetown's speech and expression policy so that it can be conducive and engaging as an environment for everyone. It's important to note that Georgetown University is committed to standards promoting speech and expression that foster the maximum exchange of ideas and opinions, whether you like it or not. While it is recognized that not everyone may share the same views as the speaker, it is expected that everyone in attendance respects the right of every speaker here to share their perspective and ideas by not causing a disruption to the event's activities. Thank you for contributing for a constructive and what I hope is a meaningful conversation. My name is Khan. I am the founder and a humble partner of this great initiative. Democracy is a loaded word. Since the inception of this current constitution, under which the Islamic Republic of Pakistan is premised, Pakistan's different leaders have actually gotten some great one-liners, some great zingers about democracy. Georgetown, the author of that constitution, had a great slogan for democracy: Roti Kapda Makan. Ziaul, the guy who followed him, didn't care much about democracy, but when he was asked who his constituency is, he quipped that the only constituency which matters to me is the army. After Zia, Bibi, the late Mohtarma Shaheed Benazir Bhutto, came up with something even more interesting. Democracy is the best revenge. After that, series of musical chairs. Not much was exciting about Nawaz Sharif's early era, except the ethnic sloganeering, the loaded democratic push for Jaj Punjabi Jaj, but in his later versions, he did come to realize that he needs to be a little broader. He came up with Vote to Izzat, and of course, the world-famous Mujhe Kyun Nikala. Of course, between those different versions and renditions of Nawaz, we had the infamous or famous, depending on how you want to treat him, the former Pakistani president, General Pervez Musharraf, who came up with the world-famous Pakistan first, with his big SSG dollars to give him company there. And then, finally, in the latest rendition of his different stands, from born-again Muslim to revived populist, there was Imran Khan. There is Imran Khan, who quipped famously, perhaps most famously, Tabdili Aayegi Nahi, Tabdili Aayegi. Now, those are different versions of democracy from some of our leaders. I can't quote the more boring ones, they don't matter. But there are some fantastic people here. And I am going to quickly premise my question to them in a format which is both exploitative of their brilliant minds, but also useful for the rest of them. We're going to go through a round robin, very rapid response. This is a town hall. It's nothing without me. So here's my premise. After listening to all those who have passed, what is the present day version of the Pakistani democratic setup? Now, Nawaz Sharif hasn't really come up with anything exciting, at least not for me as a student of communication. So, the next best thing is, of course, Pakistan's de facto military ruler, Field Marshal Asim Munshi. Now, if you follow Field Marshal Asim Munshi, which I love to do every day, it's the first guy I read about every morning. Asim Munshi has been pushing, or as well as the information machine, have been pushing a new version of the model. It's called the hybrid Nizam. In fact, he has perpetuated this with another great version of democracy, which he calls the hard state. Now, this is the Field Marshal's version of the events. Perfectly fine. That's his problem, not mine. But in these halls, these venerated halls, words have been going around. These venerated halls of the American Academy. Around 6 months ago, when I was at Harvard attending another conference, I met the Pakistani finance minister.
And I asked him a question, triggered, of course, by all of this, triggered by whatever's going on in Pakistan. I said, how does it feel, sir, to be representing a regime which is inherently illegitimate? And he turned around, batted me off like he said through the covers, and said, well, Jad, it's time for something pragmatic. Of course, with the top, he didn't really get enough. But when I further confronted him inside, he said the same thing. He said, what's the idea to do hard things and make hard decisions? A couple of weeks ago, another person, completely not related to the finance minister, a very famous columnist, Nadeem Farooq had a tweet. Now, this is a very different part of Pakistan that he represents. Not the Takht-e-Lahore, not the HSM crowd, not the establishment. In fact, quite the opposite. Nadeem Farooq is a venerated columnist, John, some people like him, some people really like him. But he said something interesting, which is being now, well, debated widely. He said it's time for pragmatic authoritarianism to take root in Pakistan. I thought that was quite interesting. I said, what is this? This is fun. What's Mr. Smoker's Corner doing here? And he said, I'm not apologizing for it. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just explaining that there's a strong man here in America. There's a strong man next door to Pakistan. In India, there's been a bunch of strong men in Iran. And of course, Afghanistan. In fact, hardcore, coercive nationalism, armed twisty nationalism, aggressive nationalism is on the rise. So if it's happening everywhere else, we might as well follow it ourselves. In reality. And this is what the center today stands for. This is not a person in uniform. This is a columnist for a mainstream progressive publication, which claims that was founded, rightly so, by Qaeda al-Mohammed Jinnah. Dawn ka columnist hai, Nawai Waqt ka columnist nahi hai. So, with that premise of a tabka aa gaya Pakistan, there is a certain type of Pakistani who say, yaar, zarurat hai, dade ki zarurat hai. Ab, Ramesh Ramadan, ek wo tabka hai, aur ek hum jaise log hain. Theek hai, we're going to have that debate. We're going to have that debate कि किस किस्म की डेमोक्रेसी की जरूरत है. मेरे साथ मेरे बड़े hamid साहब को कौन नहीं जानता. मैं जियो में एक छोटा सा अदना सा हेड ऑफ प्रोडक्ट डेवलपमेंट था जब हमने इनका शो स्टार्ट किया. ये मुझे जानते भी नहीं थे, बट पहली जो की ब्रॉडकास्ट न्यूज में मैं आई वाज ग्लैड था जब जियो न्यूज स्प्लिट हुआ. जब से मैं इनको जानता हूँ, फॉलो हिज वर्क. आज hamid साहब ने हम सबको इधर इंटरव्यू किए हैं. मुझे नहीं किया, पता नहीं क्यों, मगर बाकियों को किए हैं. शायद कोई मसला है. हमारे बच्चों से बात की है, आपसे बात की. Make sure you talk to him after this. But hamid साहब has sacrificed personally, not once, twice, 2 assassination attempts on this man. He's got a bullet in his belly to prove his stand for democracy. We must give him a quick hand. Starts up to represent and bridge the gender gap as well, but not just that, the generational gap, even more important. Yamna Rizvi hai mere saath. She's a senior policy analyst at the Center for Victims of Torture in Washington. She's done some great work on the Pakistani law and order situation, the national security situation, the human rights situation. Her craft is in data, numbers, not theory. You're going to hear a bunch of great stuff from her. It's going to be fantastic because she watches the data bit, the number crunching, which is triggering the hemorrhaging of human rights in our country. Say welcome to Yamna. Of course, Akhil Shah Saab, professor right here at the Edmund A. Wash School of Foreign Service. But Zabardast उन्होंने किताब लिखी है on the army and democracy in Pakistan. If you haven't read it, you're in the wrong room. Please give him a hand. One of the leading lights in the Pakistani academy. और फिर मेरा यार, मेरा बदमाश रजा रूमी. Raza and I have known each other for years. Raza मेरा editor भी रहा हुआ है Friday Times के लिए. वैसे भी मेरे blog पे आता रहा है. Raza, we almost lost because Raza पे attack हुआ था कुछ साल पहले, after which he was forced to move here. We were very lucky to have him. He lost his driver in that assassination attempt, which was targeted against his unbending, unrelenting stance against militant forces, proxy forces of the Pakistani military. Give him a hand. Now, you're not going to like some of the things these men and women say. But before that, before we go here, we have to go to the man with the plan. He's watching me like he's George Orwell, like his big brother. He's looking very dapper in his tracksuit, as usual. It's 2:33 a.m. Back in Pakistan, but obviously Peshawar has a special time zone which, unlike any other politically, Taimur Jhagra is the former finance minister and the health minister of the fantastic KP province, and he should have been in office. He's not. He's fighting for his rights to get the vote in. He stayed up for us just to give us the perspective, more contrarian perspective from the establishment, which I'm sure you'll have from certain people again. Taimur has been blocked from traveling to this great province, particularly picked and put on the ECL. First, his daughter was targeted. Today, he's been targeted. He is not going to stop. We will not stop. We will lead with him. Assalamu alaikum, Taimur. Okay, so here's my question. Here's my question to everyone, but we'll first take Taimur. He stayed up late, and frankly, he's the most, as far as I'm concerned, the most discriminated against speaker in our current lineup as we speak right now. So, Taimur, sort of, you heard the premise, you know the format. Everybody, starting with you, will give a quick, and I know you love to talk, it's a habit your partner might have as well, but give us a quick 2 to 3 minute summary, no more, about what you think democracy and its future is for Pakistan as we know it today.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me.
We can, loud and clear.
Okay. So look, I think that one would like to say that there is enough protection for democracy in the Constitution and in our system, and enough safeguards that it shouldn't be under threat of any kind. So, for example, for democracy to be under threat, you would assume a few things to happen that shouldn't be happening. The Constitution is safeguarded by the fact that you need 2/3 of a majority in both houses of Parliament to be able to change it. And without changing it, that Constitution should guarantee fundamental rights, should guarantee democracy. So for this to happen, you would, for example, need to imagine that a party that has won 50 seats, 40 seats, 30 seats, 17 seats, can somehow be contrived to be put into power. It's very unlikely. You then have the safeguard of the courts and the Supreme Court of Pakistan. You would then need to assume that in some way you could break the court, where traditionally, as you said, that there have been different sides of the political divide, there have almost always been judges who will take a stand for democracy. And it's hard to imagine that on top of rigging an election in that way, that you could also break the courts to be able to break that safeguard. Right? And in the voting process, when you try and flat track this, you would also need to imagine, right, that somehow that those numbers that you need to break the Constitution are really put in place, and it's unlikely. Because even in a place like Pakistan, to ensure that 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly are present and vote for a constitutional amendment against their wills, and 2/3 of those in the Senate also vote for such amendments against their will. It's just unlikely to happen. If we remember, that's what stopped Nawaz Sharif from becoming Amirul Momineen in 1999.
30 seconds, 30 more seconds for your opening statement, please.
Yeah. So all of this should be very unlikely to happen. But you know, and I know, all your panelists know, and all the audience knows, that all of this has happened in the last 3 years. And so what this means is, forget the future of democracy. the present of democracy is exceptionally dark. And for the future to be light, we need to fight for it. And that's my statement.
Thank you, Taimur Jhagra. Obviously, I forgot to mention that Taimur Jhagra is in the PTI. I'm really sorry about that. Just to make clear. Okay, all right. Next, the one and only, Hamid Mirza, 2 to 3 minutes, your opening statement about the state of democracy as you know it and the future of democracy as you think it will happen in Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Rajat Singh Khan. You see, Pakistan was founded by a Democrat, Raja Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And Pakistan can only survive with a democratic system. And if you go through the history of Pakistan, whenever there was dictatorship in Pakistan, Pakistan faced problems. Pakistan was broken, Pakistan was divided when a military dictator was ruling this country. Gwadar was added in the territory of Pakistan in September 1958 when a very weak political government was ruling this country and the Prime Minister was Malik Feroz Khan Noon. He was a very weak Prime Minister, but he added Gwadar in the territory of Pakistan. General Ziaul Haq was a very powerful dictator in Pakistan, but when he was ruling this country, we lost Siachen. And as I mentioned, Pakistan was broken when General Yahya Khan was ruling this country. So whenever there was dictatorship in Pakistan, Pakistan suffered a lot. So the worst democracy is better than a good and powerful dictatorship. I don't believe, I don't agree with those people who say that the future of Pakistan is very bleak. Why? What is the reason? Because I am in journalism since last 35 years, and this is the first time in my journalistic career that I see the young people in Pakistan from Azad Kashmir to Balochistan and from Balochistan to Sindh and from Sindh to Punjab. All of them are on one page. And just 3 days ago, when I was heading to the airport for coming here, so I was sitting in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Assembly, where the Chief Minister Suhail Afridi organized a Grand Peace Jirga. And you know, it is not reported in the media properly, but all the political parties, including PMLN and JUI and all other parties, even the PMLQ, which is the legacy of General Pervez Musharraf, they were on one page and they were saying there was an agreement that the operations in the province should be conducted by the KP police and CTD, not by the others. And all the political parties were on one page. And they released a long declaration on which Islamabad is not ready to agree with them. But the political leadership of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they were on one page, including PMLN and the opponents of the PTI, which is ruling the province. So this is very important, that the province is being run by a chief executive, Suhail Afridi, who is not acceptable to Islamabad. But due to the public pressure and the public opinion, all the political parties were forced to agree with the policy of the provincial government. And this is not the case of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa only. The common people in Punjab, in Sindh, in Balochistan, in Azad Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, they think like the same. So many people here asked me questions about the 27th Amendment, and they said, oh, we don't see any future of democracy in Pakistan after that amendment. So I was telling them that there was 8th Amendment when General Ziaul Haq was ruling this country. So he amended the constitution through 8th Amendment and grabbed all the powers of the parliament. But it was reversed.
30 more seconds, Mr.
And then 17th Amendment was done by Musharraf. It was reversed. So I believe in the people of Pakistan, in the resilience of the Pakistanis, and this kind of black constitutional amendment will be reversed because people of Pakistan defeated 4 military dictators in the last 78 years. They will defeat all the forces who are trying to impose a dictatorship in Pakistan.
Thank you. Yamna Rizvi, take it away.
Thank you, Wajaha. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Can I just preface by saying, in case we get questions later, I am not a data cruncher. I don't work with numbers. I've long worked on human rights issues in Pakistan, including in Pakistan, and I work on national security issues now. I appreciate that Wajaha thinks I'm that smart to work on numbers. The only numbers that I have here is the numbers of pages that I have, because I'm sitting amongst these giants.
I was hoping that, but the last time you and I interacted, you had some great numbers about the human rights crisis. That's where I was taking it from.
Well,
But go ahead.
I appreciate that. No, but my numbers are because I'm sitting here with these giants and I've prepped for this. But so, look, in my experience on working in human rights in Pakistan and now working on national security and human rights in DC, while also observing the global decline of democracy, the one pattern that I see is that when institutions expand beyond their mandates, when executive overreach in the name of national security specifically expands without checks and balances, human rights violations occur. And trust ultimately then erodes and collapses. And without trust, democracies cannot function. People want democracy because they want agency, they want representation over who governs them. They want security, stable borders, and an environment in which economic life can flourish. But again, we've seen how executive power has chipped away at checks and balances globally. From my work at CBT, including visiting Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, I've seen how extraordinary powers justified in the name of national security persist long after the crisis that created them. That permanence reveals a deeper truth. Extraordinary measures rarely stay temporary. And we're seeing this now, that Guantanamo not only exists, but the fact that it's being repurposed by the Trump administration. So for 75 years, unfortunately, Pakistan has been a security-centric state. And when security becomes the organizing principle of the state, democratic norms sit perpetually in the balance and slowly erode. That doesn't mean that people don't want democracy, as Hamid Saab just gave excellent examples. The movements against Ayub Khan, the 1983 movement for the restoration of democracy, the Loris movement in the 2000s, history shows us that Pakistan's public has never been depoliticized. Rather, they've consistently mobilized for democratic principles. This is why even today, right, most recently with the resignations of the Supreme Court justices, people recite Fez, Faraz, and Habib Jalil, because the tensions that they wrote about between authority and agency, between security and citizenship, still define Pakistan's political landscape. Human rights abuses like mass surveillance, vague extremism laws, media restrictions, crackdown on protests, and special courts for civilians all emerge in moments of fear and then normalize. Today, Pakistan stands at an inflection point, a highly politicized population that should be harnessed, that increasingly does not trust its institutions, and a political framework in which the imbalance of institutions is becoming formalized. So my position is this, that Pakistan can still become a credible democracy and have working institutions, but it's up to the people of Pakistan to define for themselves what a democracy is.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I've been sparing with my descriptions and my definitions. I must properly now address the young Yamna Rizvi as a senior policy analyst at the Center of Victims of Torture, where she covers U.S. national security and human rights. Previously, she's worked with Pakistan with Justice Project, Pakistan Torture and Death Penalty, and with the Pakistan Human Rights Capacity Building Program. So, I've also been sparing about Aqil and Raza. In fact, I have not explained probably the best looking man on this lineup, who is Dr. Bukhari, who can't be with us because of personal obligations and problems. He hasn't been stopped by the ECM. But I must also remind you that this is sort of like an exile club of sorts. I feel like we must now go to that part of the room. Akil, Raza and I are sort of on the same page. The semi-exile, self-exile, kind of exile, not very welcome back home type club. So now we got a little understanding here, right? So Akil, take it away.
Thank you, Bajad. Thank you, Rai. I'm really disappointed that the only thing you remember about Georgetown is this and not the course you took with me. I have a long-standing belief that Pakistan's society and its citizenry actually needs more protection from the army than by the army. And, speakers before me have given you sort of a very eloquent summary, so I won't go into the history. But we must recognize that Pakistan's deep structural imbalance, in which the military now has an institutionalized hegemony over not just the state, but pretty much all institutions of the state, civil society, and the economy. And so, in that sense, let me put my professor hat on and says, what is democracy? Democracy basically, at its very minimum, is the idea that the outcome of elections should not be predetermined, one. And two, that those who get elected as a result of a free and fair election should not be subject to the vetoes of institutions like the military. And so in that sense, Pakistan really has rarely been a democracy, even in the minimum sense, unfortunately. Coming to this recent, what's now known as the hybrid regime. Hybrid regime is basically the concept that Pakistan seems to be stuck in this gray zone when it's neither a democracy nor authoritarian. But with the 27th extra constitutional amendment, I think Pakistan is inching closer to the authoritarian side of the ledger than the democratic one. And this form of sort of authoritarianism is basically, we've seen since 2018, so with due respect to Mr. Jhagra, it did not start in 2022, it actually started in 2018. And the idea is that you basically put allies or political parties or leaders that are willing to play by your rules of the game. You shut out the opposition from the entire political system, jail them, harass them, and you then engineer the constitution in a way that solidifies your power. The most dangerous thing about this new amendment and the sort of consolidation of power in the office of the Army Chief of Staff is not just that it's obviously blatantly authoritarian, but that it provides almost a semi-permanent basis to the power of the Army Chief of Staff. And we always make the mistake of individualizing Pakistan's structural problems. So today it's Munir, yesterday it was Bajwa, then it was Ziaul. I think the fundamental problem is really institutional and structural, not individual. So if it was an individual problem, if you compare Musharraf to Zia, I mean, they are as different from each other in terms of their, let's say, religious beliefs, backgrounds, economic, right?
30 more seconds.
Okay. So my point is basically that the fundamental rot is institutional, not individual. And unless we recognize that fact, and we, right now, one political party says, Asim Munir is the bad guy, of course he's consolidating power. The same political party said General Bajwa is the father of the nation. So the problem is that the army always finds these opportunistic politicians who are willing to play by the rules of the game. And I don't even blame the politicians, because there's a perverse incentive to cooperate with the military, because the route to power lies through the GHQ and not through elections. Thank you.
I was sparing with Raza as well, as far as my description of him. He wasn't just a victim of a near assassination attempt. But Raza, mashallah, importantly, is critically placed as a distinguished lecturer at the City University of New York. He's a best-selling author, and of course, he's one of the finest journalists of his generation. I didn't want to make it sound like we just have a victim here. He's not. He also has a lot of his own victims and scalps, especially in GHQ right now. Raza.
Thank you, Well, first of all, thank you very much, and kudos to the students who've organized and put this together. Really remarkable given the turnout and the quality of sessions that I attended. Much has been said, it's always the problem being last, because whatever you want to say, others have said it. But let me give it a shot. So when we think of the future, we cannot ignore the history. History defines what the present is and also shapes what the future is. So as Hamid Saab said earlier, I think if we look at Pakistan's history, which is turbulent and checkered, there's a 10-year itch. Every 10 years, there is a move to, roll back whatever democratic advancement or improvement has been made, and we enter into an authoritarian moment. So we are here in 2025, looking at the 27th Amendment, and if we look back what was happening almost a decade ago, this is the culmination of that. It has always been, already been mentioned, whether it was, and it started not just with Imran Khan, it started earlier during Nawaz Sharif's tenure, when his interior minister was shutting down all NGOs, sending INGOs out, and squeezing the civil society. And then the military leadership and the intelligence agency took advantage and engineered an election of their choice and formally set down the hybrid model in place, which we see now has been legalized and constitutionalized, if I may use this word. So it is of course a very disturbing and unsettling moment. But should we be worried? I think we should not, because the reason is that, as has been said, Pakistan oscillates between a democratic ideal and an authoritarian reality. The people of Pakistan, it's a very diverse country. The only way that that country can function is through a democratic process and consensus. So people will challenge this. We already are seeing many voices. If you look at, it was mentioned that 3 dictators, we always mention that, but we must equally emphasize that the people of Pakistan stood up and fought for their rights, whether it was General Ayub Khan, or it was Ziaul Haq, or it was Musharraf. All 3 had to exit power after popular movements which forced them out of power. So I'm not that pessimistic. I think the moment is bleak, certainly. And what also